Questions on structural safety after a Lohas Park flat is suspected to have had a load-bearing wall removed. The first commercial flight of China's C919 jetliner. And in America, an agreement in principle between the top congressional Republican and the White House on the U.S. debt ceiling. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. A load-bearing wall in a 700-square-foot unit at Lohas Park in Tseung Kwan O is suspected to have been removed during renovation work. A district councillor says the estate management is getting experts to look into the situation, but concerns remain over the structural safety of the building. A video showing a home renovation project in this 681-square-foot unit at Lohas Park Phase 1, the capital, went viral online. That's after 3 original bedrooms were remodeled into a master bedroom and a closet. But it looks like the modification involved the load-bearing wall. Many tenants have contacted the building's customer service and demanded an investigation. Sai-Kung District Councillor Christine Fong said the MTR property management has got in touch with the homeowner in question. She said the owner was asked to employ registered structural engineers to deal with the situation, and so far the owner has been willing to do so. Experts say floor plans usually indicate load-bearing walls with bold lines. In this particular case, the wall that was removed was also marked in bold lines. He said one can only confirm whether the load-bearing wall was demolished by looking at the structural plan from the buildings department.
So if you had demolished part of the wall, you will weaken those structural wall, and most likely the stress will be concentrated on some corner or somewhere, and then to cause the wall to be cracked. And once the wall has been damaged, it may cause the whole building's overall stability. The decoration company, they may not have the knowledge in structural engineering. Of course, the owner had the responsibility, right, and the liability. They need to confirm whether this is a structural wall. For the structural wall, you need to do a formal submission to obtain BD's consent and approval.
In 2010, a 55-year-old building in To Kwa Wan collapsed, resulting in 4 deaths and 2 injuries. Investigations revealed renovation workers at a ground floor shop might have damaged a load-bearing pillar. Just this month, in Heilongjiang province in the northeast of the Chinese mainland, a tenant removed the structural wall while renovating a flat, causing cracks to appear in other walls. The number of deregistrations for organ donations have risen rapidly in recent months. However, Secretary for Health Lo Chung-Mao said it would not affect or halt the regularization process between the organ donation frameworks of Hong Kong and the mainland. Timothy Lee reports.
Over the past 5 months, Hong Kong's organ donation scheme with the mainland, otherwise known as the Centralized Organ Donation Register, reported a massive drop in donor registrations. But local health authorities stressed that the donation mechanism retains strong approval from residents. Speaking with TVB News, Secretary for Health Lo Chung-Mao said the city overwhelmingly supports the current organ donation system, blaming many of the deregistrations on malicious individuals.
Some of the people, they don't understand the current organ donation and transplant system and how much our motherland has improved in the system so that it's now all up to international standard. There is a lot of misinformation and ill-intended information put up in the media, trying to smear our organ donation system and also trying to disrupt this cross-border collaboration. I would clearly want to condemn these acts.
Lo added that ongoing discussions for the organ donation framework include the mainland and the SAR actively contacting each other if unable to find a suitable local recipient for a donated organ. The health chief emphasized that the mainland has been easing transport for mainland organs to the city in recent times.
Our motherland has always been very supportive of the organ transplant activity in Hong Kong. As you can see in the last incident where in December last year, we have the 4-month-old baby who require an urgent heart transplant to sustain life. All the bureaus, departments in the mainland government were very supportive in creating a green channel for a cross-border heart donation.
Low said that as residents could still deregister from the organ donation scheme even without a prior registration, the Department of Health must urgently update its registration process to avoid further abuse. Meanwhile, the hospital authority reminded residents that prerequisites for body donations include the death certificate of the donor. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
China's first self-developed and produced passenger jet has successfully completed its first commercial flight from Shanghai to Beijing. It returned to Shanghai later. President Xi Jinping called it a triumph, and state media said it could break the West's aviation monopoly. David Garrett reports.
Preparing for takeoff, Shanghai Hongqiao Airport on a beautiful sunny morning. A project that's been 15 years in the making. These are the first passengers to experience what it's hoped will be the future of Chinese passenger planes. As the flight attendants checked tickets, some staff got emotional and waved as the C919 aircraft prepares to take to the sky. After the final checks were made, a potential rival to the Airbus SE's A320 is ready to fly. State-backed China Eastern Airlines has ordered 5 C919s, and the company operated the new aircraft's first commercial flight from Shanghai to Beijing. The 164-seater with 8 business-class seats could also rival Boeing's 737. Although Chinese designed and manufactured, it does rely on some Western components. China hopes to produce 150 C919s a year within the next 5 years. From a great vantage point, these flight enthusiasts were seeing history firsthand. This student wrote down the details in his own flight log. He plans to take a trip from Shanghai to Chengdu on the C919 next week. On board, these shots seem to show everything working well. More than 130 passengers relaxing in the cool air conditioning and enjoying movies. The food looked tasty, and the plane even had its own birthday cake. And less than 3 hours later, they were in Beijing. This footage, filmed by a passenger on a mobile phone, shows the view as the plane touches down in the capital. A gentle landing greeted by applause. Everyone arrived safely, and passengers said the journey was smoother than they'd expected. The aircraft was given a Watergate ceremony, the highest greeting in civil aviation. The plane made its return to Shanghai later in the day, coming back from Beijing, a round-trip flight of over 2,000 kilometres to round off a perfect day. David Garrett, TVB News.
A man who opened an emergency exit door on an Asiana flight in South Korea has been arrested and faces up to 10 years in prison if convicted. The plane was approaching Daegu when a 33-year-old man opened the door. He told authorities that he felt suffocated and was trying to get off the plane quickly. 12 people were slightly injured when air was blasted inside the cabin. Daegu police have 20 days to investigate before any charges. The Airbus A321 was on an internal flight from the southern island of Jeju. The White House and top congressional Republican Kevin McCarthy have reached a tentative deal to suspend the federal government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling in the coming few days. The next step for the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives is pushing it through the House, where it will probably face pushback from progressive Democrats and hardline Republicans. Matthew Bray reports.
The tentative deal was announced without any fanfare, a nod perhaps to the bitterness of the negotiations that have rumbled on and off for months.
We have to curb inflation. We've got to make us less dependent upon China. I've laid out the framework. There will be no new taxes. The president stated he wanted more taxes, he wanted new programs. That's not going to happen.
There was no talking from the president, who has been vocal in recent days and is currently at Camp David. Instead, a tweet from the White House saying an agreement had been reached, which means not everyone gets what they want. So, what is in the deal that prevents the shattering default that would have sent America into recession and reverberated around global markets? The deal suspends the debt limit through to January 2025 while capping spending in the 2024 and 25 budgets. It will claw back unused COVID funds, speed up the permitting process for some energy projects, and include some extra work requirements for food aid programs for poor Americans. McCarthy said he expects to finish writing the bill Sunday, speak to Biden again and have a vote on Wednesday. They have to thread the needle to clear the House, which has a 222-213 Republican majority, and the Senate with a 51-49 Democratic majority. House members need 72 hours to read the legislation, then it needs a few more days to pass through the House and Senate. They need to get a move on. Treasury has already stated the federal government won't be able to meet all obligations by June the 5th. Top GOP and Democrat officials need to whip the rank and file into line. A revolt by the House Freedom Caucus, which has sway with McCarthy, could derail the deal if they think spending cuts don't go far enough. Equally, Liberal Democrats could vote against the bill if it cedes too much ground to Republicans. Bipartisan support is then needed for the deal to go through. Noise from both sides indicate neither is happy with what was announced Saturday night. McCarthy still has a lot to do to pull this off. Matthew Bray, TVB News.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo says Washington won't tolerate China's effective ban on purchases of Micron technology memory chips. She says the U.S. is working with allies to address such economic coercion. On May the 21st, China's cyberspace regulator claimed Micron had failed its network security review. That meant it would block key infrastructure operators from buying from the company. Raimondo raised the issue with Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao last Thursday. So far, there is no resolution in the offing, and Micron has forecast a revenue reduction. The Chinese move came just a day after the G7 agreed to push back against economic coercion by China. Polling has begun in Turkey in a presidential runoff that could see Tayyip Recep Erdogan extend his rule into a third decade. The 69-year-old Erdogan came out with a 5-point lead over Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu in the first round of May 14th, narrowly falling short of the 50% needed to win outright. His strong showing came despite a cost of living crisis and the aftermath of an earthquake that killed thousands. Erdogan, head of the Islamic-rooted AK party, says a vote for him is a vote for stability in the country of 85 million. Kılıçdaroğlu, 74, is the candidate of a 6-party opposition alliance. He has vowed to sweep back many of his rivals' political and economic policies, as well as send back millions of refugees from Syria. Polls close at 10 p.m. Hong Kong time. Still ahead on tonight's news. One of the biggest Russian air attacks on the Ukrainian capital. HKE toll now in service at Lion Rock Tunnel. And banyan tree leaves ravaged by a type of moth at Kowloon Park and elsewhere. Welcome back to TVB News. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered stronger border security to ensure the speedy movement of military personnel and civilians into regions captured by Moscow. This as Russia launched one of its biggest attacks on the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, using dozens of suicide drones. The attack comes as Ukraine prepares for a major counter-offensive to take back land in the eastern regions. Nazvi Karim has more.
Sunday is Kyiv Day in the Ukrainian capital, celebrating the anniversary of the city's founding more than 1,500 years ago. But for the city's 3 million residents, the sounds of sirens, drones, explosions and crumbling buildings serve to disrupt an occasion, usually marked by street fairs, live concerts and exhibitions. Ukraine's Air Force said it shot down 52 of 54 Iranian-made suicide drones that were launched by Russia overnight. It appeared to be the first deadly attack on Kyiv in May, with a 41-year-old man killed by falling debris. It comes as Ukraine prepares for a long-awaited counter-offensive to recapture territory from Russian forces in the east. As drones fell on Kiev, Russia claimed to have intercepted 2 long-range British-supplied Storm Shadow cruise missiles and shorter-range US-built missiles launched by HIMARS multiple rocket systems. Moscow said it also destroyed several drones heading towards the Ilsky oil refinery near the Black Sea. All this as Ukraine forces wait for the green light to launch their counter-offensive. Oleksiy Danilov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, told the BBC that the push could begin tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or in a week. Ukraine claims that Russia may try to disrupt Kiev's offensive by attacking the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and reporting a nuclear leak that would trigger an international probe. Meanwhile, Li Hui, the visiting special representative of the Chinese government on Eurasian affairs, was in Moscow to meet Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and other high-ranking Kremlin leaders. Li said Beijing will strengthen exchange and dialogue with both parties in Ukraine conflict in pursuit of a political settlement. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Back locally, the implementation of the HKE toll expanded to Lion Rock Tunnel today. The new automatic payment method went live at 5 this morning. All toll booths in the area could be seen closed, while lanes to Kowloon Tong and Sha Tin have both been reduced to 3 respectively. Most drivers crossing the tunnel today said they were used to the change and that the traffic flow was smooth. The Transport Department noted that by the end of the year, it aims to implement the HKE toll across all tunnels. Some arborists said that a type of moth called the Falda flamans has ravaged the leaves of banyan trees in numerous districts in Hong Kong, including Kowloon Park. They criticized the government for not taking it seriously and failing to set guidelines to deal with the problem. Veronica Lin reports.
Many residents travel to the suburbs to enjoy the green scenery over the holidays. However, as you look at the trees, have you ever noticed these small insects? These are the larvae of a moth called Falda flamans. While they might look like ordinary larvae at first glance, these moths consume the leaves of banyan trees when they reach adulthood. Kevin Yuan worked on a tree team at the Leisure and Cultural Services Department before retiring. He's researched moths for years. He found Falda flamans only appeared in Yunlong and Lao Fao Shan before 2019, but their population has exploded over the last 3 years, spreading to Tuen Mun, and other places. This year, larvae have been spotted in the new territories in Kowloon. Some of the banyan trees at Kowloon Park in Tsim Sha Tsui were left barren. Yun said the banyan tree's leaves may die within a month if larvae were found. According to Yuan, the moths have an extraordinary ability to reproduce. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs. The hatching rate is also high at 98%. So one female can produce hundreds of thousands, he added. Instead of having a one-size-fits-all mindset, he explained that each area has to have its own control method. The Conservancy Association, on the other hand, said that banyan trees are tough and can rebound from past infestations. However, due to global warming, there's been a sharp increase in pests, which threatens tree growth. Hui Shik Yuan, manager of the association, said the insects hibernate less due to the rising temperatures. With each pest attack, the tree's immune system weakens, leaving them more vulnerable to future infestations. Some experts say one way to save the trees is to remove the soil surrounding the affected area and spray with pesticide before its next life cycle. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.